Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tabor Talk. I'm your host, Michael Tabor. Let me take a sip here. Okay, so I've been doing this for 36 days. I'm putting out a lot of content, like 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 videos a day. So, no shortage of content, of things I could talk about. Ask my wife, I could talk for 8 hours and be interesting. Uninterrupted, I could talk for 8 hours. I've read, like I said, I've read about 45,000 books. That's an exaggeration, but I've read a shit ton of books, and I have a lot of information. So I've been told. Like, people who do this stuff know. Like, they're not stupid. Like Howard Stern or Joe Rogan or Sam Harris. Of course, they're friends and coworkers and colleagues, and they say, whoa, dude, you got a good personality. You got a lot of shit to say. Do a podcast. Of course they know that, right? So they don't, I know it too, which is why I'm doing this. I have a lot of gifts, and I'm very grateful that I have this opportunity to talk about this. How great is it to be living today, 2019, with all this technology, access to YouTube and all this? I'm some guy out living in the Catskills, and I've always known that I've had this talent. I majored in journalism, right? And for whatever reason, that was many years ago, it just didn't work out, and I kind of gave up, and I did some other stuff, but I knew I had this, and now I could do it. It's just that I'm older, and but I'm going to do it. You'll see. So, which is a good segue into what I really want to talk about. So I grew up listening to Howard Stern. That was my first real big kind of hero, guru. I'm talking about after high school. And when I went to school, I went to school for journalism, really print, but I was interested in broadcasting as well. And again, people tell you, like, Mike, you got a really nice sounding voice. You're physically attractive. You're handsome. You could be kind of a journalist. Of course you hear that. I go, oh, okay, duh. And my hero growing up was Howard Stern. And I started listening to him. I've done a video recording on this, but let me just repeat myself. So I started listening to him back in 82, 83, was it? 83, I believe, when he came to New York here and was on NBC. And I just loved him. He was different and just talk about guerrilla style. His whole thing was just being this regular guy, just fucking talking, and it was just so refreshing. And then he got fired from NBC. Like, he would talk about, like, his last day on NBC or the week before, he'd be talking on the air. He'd be calling his bosses live on the air. And he's like, hey. And eventually he did get fired. And the rest is history, right? So the rest of the story. So K-Rock picked him up like 3, 4, 5 months later. Started with K-Rock, which was a nothing station. It was actually a newer rock station, FM, which is kind of weird. You had AM radio talk show, and he's coming over to FM, which is totally different and new. And I remember that very first broadcast. I listened to the whole thing. I go, this guy is special, Howard Stern. And I know he had a cult following and all that, but I said, this guy, you watch. Actually, it's before I met my wife, but I talked to everyone. I go, this guy's going to be big. You watch. Howard Stern's going to be huge. And we all know the rest of the story. So Howard, number one in the world, not even close. Like, each radio show, you'd have like 25 million people listening in. It was fucking insane. Insanity. Back in the 90s, then he did a movie, and then he went to satellite, and that was a new sort of technology. Like, what the hell? And then he had to pay for it. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm going to pay for radio, $10 a month, whatever. And then he just took off, and we all know what his contract was. Signed a 5-year, $500 million contract. $100 million a year for a talk show host. It's insane. It's insanity. It really is insane. And he's the best, and he's great, and all that. I've been super critical of him, my whole life afterwards. You know how that works. I was his biggest fan ever, and then you kind of turn on him when he goes. When he went mainstream and got popular. You know how that works. I'm a hipster. I'm like, oh, everybody likes him, so fuck him. And then he got too full of himself. His ego got away with him. and I got turned off. And now he's better now. I like Howard a lot now, and he's just an awesome guy. But just try to imagine it: $100 million a year. And now the big star is Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the king of podcasting. Howard Stern was the king of all media. Now we have Joe Rogan, who has like 1.2 billion B downloads a year. It's a different sort of thing, you know. I've always wondered. I've been texting Rogan. I'm sure he's heard from other people. Like, why don't you get Howard Stern or go to Howard Stern? Howard would have to fly out to California. Do you think Howard would do that? Would he eat crow? Right? Would he be like, oh my God, you're, you know, like this change of guard, you're the new king? That would be a huge show. I don't know how relevant Howard Stern is. I mean, I know there are a couple of articles in the New York Times. Everyone likes him, and he's well respected, you know, now, which is interesting. Like how raunchy his show was when he first started out. And now he's older. He's 65 years old. He's an old fuck, right? He's a senior citizen. And he's a nicer guy, and he's super smart, you know, and I love Howard Stern. So anyway, going on. It's almost 7 minutes. So, and maybe in another video, I'll talk about my background, right? So I wanted to be this journalist. I wanted to be like a Howard Stern. I wanted to be a talk show host, all that. And it just didn't work out, and I took shit jobs. I mean, I did everything. Like I was a fucking bill collector. After college, I looked for like 4, 5, 6 months. I couldn't get a fucking job in the city. In Manhattan, I'm looking for some sort of, I was willing to start at the bottom, and I was dumb back then. I was a fucking moron. But anyway, I just took anything, and I got this job at a freaking collection agency. It was actually a check guaranteeing service back in Wayne, New Jersey. The name of the company was Credit Services of America. It was total fucking gangster, not gangs, but it was fucking bill collecting, man. This company guaranteed checks, and when they didn't pay, we'd go after them. And 90% of the checks went through anyway, right? And it was just all gravy. It was just money. It was a big thing, and then eventually they went under. And then I stayed in that fucking shit industry, credit and collections. And I met my wife. I worked at Lord & Taylor in their credit department. My wife did too. And we were both like these really smart people. My wife and I had this friend Miles, and we were just like really smart and really super educated, and yet we're doing fucking collections. It's hilarious. You meet a lot of people in credit and collections who are fucked up, like people who've fallen through the cracks, right? So anyway, I did that for years, and then I got into recruiting, headhunting, right? So I did sales a little bit. I worked for a leasing company, and then I got into recruiting, headhunting, and that was pretty lucrative. I could have done better, but anyway, so I worked for MRI, Management Recruitment, and I did okay. I could have done better. My head wasn't really in it, and I was a recruiter, executive search consultant, a headhunter, if you will, and I focused. My focus was. The industries was biotech and pharmaceutical industries, and my focus was clinical research. Like really, I would just place 4 main, like clinical research is huge, right? You have data management and all that, but my area was really on the trials, like clinical CRAs, they call them, clinical research associates, and then like their bosses, like the managers. So yeah, the project managers, and then you had like all different levels of management, and then you had so after the project managers, then you would have like associate director and director, and then overseeing that little tiny part of clinical research. But there's so many branches. You know, there's data management, there's IT, there's quality assurance, there's regulatory affairs. It's so fucking huge and massive. And I was just in that little tiny area. 4 jobs: CRAs, project managers, associate director level, director level. Okay, I really digress. I'm going to do a lot more on this. About what I'm going to do is talk a lot about specializing, like generalizing versus specializing. But I digress, so let me end it here. Good friends, good books, and a sleepy conscience. Peace, love, and understanding.